All right, welcome to lab number 10. The purpose of this lab is to utilize the trend identification process to help you identify downtrends. Now for this lab, we're going to use the quick step process, although you can find the 5-step process, which is located here as a reference. Now with the quick step process, you should notice that it's pretty much the same process as the process for uptrends, where we start with the current price, which is always going to be far right on the chart. Then 2, we back into the current trend by drawing the most 3 recent segments from current price. And then finally in step 3, we work our way back to the right, analyzing the current trend in order to evaluate what trend it is and then to confirm that it is in fact valid. So for this first exercise, we'll be looking at ticker symbol CLI. We'll be looking at it on a weekly time frame. So feel free to take your charts there. And then once you're there, we need to come up with a common starting point. So for that, you can place a timeline anywhere on the chart and then go into the settings cog for the timeline and adjust the date to 11/2 of 2020. So for this exercise, we're going to assume that the candle located at 11/2/2020 is the location of current price. So feel free to move your chart over to cut off any candles to the right of that timeline. And that's in order to just avoid any confusion during our analysis. All right, the next step from current price, we want to draw the 3 most recent segments working from the current price going from right to left. So before you start, go ahead and pause the recording. And then once you're done, resume the recording and we'll take a look at the correct answer. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, and the correct answer is... All right, now as you can see here, we have our 3 most recent segments coming from current price. Working from right to left, we come up here, stop, then we come back down, and then we come up, okay? And then from there, we work our way back toward current price, seeing that we have a first segment being a down segment. Second segment is an up segment, which is a pullback. And then the third segment, we have another down segment, okay? So we see the 3 boxes here. The first is a tall red box. The second box is a smaller green box that doesn't extend beyond the red box. And then we have another red box that extends beyond the green box. And all of that together indicates that we have a downtrend. If we think back to the basic characteristics of a downtrend, we have a high, we have a low, we have here a lower high, and then we have a lower low. Definitely a downtrend. All right, now what I've gone ahead and done is I've numbered all these swing points within the downtrend. The high, number 1, the low, number 2, the lower high, number 3, and the lower low is number 4. Now what I want you to do is go ahead, looking at these numbers, see if you can identify which one of these swing points is the controlling swing point in the downtrend. So go ahead and pause the video. See if you can identify which one of these swing points is the controlling swing point. Then resume the video and we'll go ahead and go over the correct response. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, and the correct answer is swing point number 3, which was the we had the high, we had the low, and then we had the lower high. Okay, so the swing in control was swing number 3, the lower high. All right, also recall that the controlling swing will always be located between the low and the last segment in the downtrend. Okay. Also recall that if price were to ever move back up and cross above the controlling swing high, then the downtrend would be discontinued. All right. So now go ahead and take a look at these three segments. You have the first segment here, the second segment, and the third segment. See if you can identify which one of these segments is the breakout segment. Go ahead and pause the recording. Identify which segment is the breakout segment, then resume the recording to display the correct answer. Go ahead and pause the recording now. All right, and the correct answer is... All right, and here we have the correct answer. All right, recall that whenever we have a downtrend, again, it always starts with a high. All right, it then makes a low. It has a pullback or a mild correction, which is the lower high. And then the moment price crosses below the previous low, that segment becomes the breakout segment, and the lower high becomes the controlling swing high, or otherwise known as the swing in control. And again, this is the swing in control because if price were to ever cross back above that price point, then the downtrend would be discontinued. Okay, but again, we have our breakout segment here. The breakout segment is always the segment that crosses below the low and makes a lower low. And the controlling swing high will always be the swing point that is located between the low and the breakout segment. All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and try this exercise again. So go ahead and take your charts to BIDU on a weekly time frame. Again, we'll pick our common starting point. So go ahead and place a vertical timeline anywhere on the chart. Go into the settings cog and adjust the date to 7/1 of 2019. And then again, feel free to move your chart over a bit to cut off any candles to the right of our timeline in order to avoid any confusion when conducting our analysis. Then go ahead and pause the recording and draw out the three most recent segments starting from current price, moving from right to left. Now, again, forewarning, there will be some situations such as this one. When drawing out the trend, you may have a few candles that will not be included in the overall trend. Okay, so remember we discussed in a previous video that if you start drawing out a trend and current price happens to be in a pullback or in a corrective phase, you'll need to draw out 4 segments in order to get the overall trend identified. Okay, so keep that in mind during this exercise. And then again, before you get started, pause the recording. And then once you're done, resume the video and we'll go ahead and display the correct response. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, and the correct answer is... Okay, so here we have the 3 most recent segments. Well, actually, you may have, again, as we discussed, you may have identified this segment, but if you were to draw 3 segments from here, 1, 2, and 3, this would not appropriately identify the price action and the overall trend. So you would have needed to draw a 4th segment, which would be this segment here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, in order to get an idea of what price is actually doing within this particular trend. All right, so if you drew this segment out, you would have had to draw 4 segments. If you chose to ignore it, that's fine also. Okay, as you can see, we have a long red box here, then we have a short green box, and then another tall, long red box. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is when you drew this final segment here, you may not have drawn it the same way I did. Maybe you came all the way up here. Maybe you only came to there. Maybe you went all the way up here. Maybe you may have went all the way up here. Okay. If you did that, either way is fine. because ultimately we're still looking at a downtrend, whether you identified this price point as the high, whether it was here, whether it was here, or whether it was here. Any one of these highs would have been okay. It just means that in order for you to go farther back, you would have had to draw another down segment or another segment here before you went back up. But either way, you're looking at a downtrend, because in either one of these scenarios, you have a high, you have a low, you have a lower high, and you have a lower low. So really what you want to be able to do is get the gist of understanding how to identify the trend based on the swing points that are created through price action. Okay, so always recall that a downtrend is always going to be made of lower highs and lower lows. So you have a high, you have a low, you have a lower high, and then we have a lower low. So regardless of how you chose to draw out your chart, as long as those basic principles are present, you have correctly identified the downtrend. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, looking at your chart, see if you can identify which swing point is the controlling swing point, and then see if you can identify which segment is the breakout segment. So go ahead and pause the recording, identify the controlling swing point in the breakout segment, then resume the recording to display the correct answer. All right, go ahead and pause the recording now. All right, and the correct answer is... All right, and here we have our controlling swing high, and then here we have our breakout segment. Okay, recall that the breakout segment will always be attached to the controlling swing high, and the controlling swing high will always be located between the breakout segment and the previous low. Okay, so again, we have a high, we have a low, we have a lower high. Then once price crosses below the low, this segment becomes the breakout segment, and the lower high becomes the controlling swing high. And we say that it is the controlling swing high because, again, if price moves back up and crosses this price point, the downtrend is discontinued. Okay, so for this portion of the exercise, as you can see, I have ticker ZVO. We are still on a weekly time frame, and obviously you have 3 charts in front of you. And what I want you to see if you can do is see if you can identify which one of these, if any at all, have been drawn correctly with respect to the trend. Okay, you have 1, 2, and 3 charts. All 3 are the same stock, same ticker, same time frame, and the exact same place on the chart. See if you can identify which one of these are drawn correctly, if any of them are drawn correctly. So go ahead and pause the video, mark off the ones that you think are correct and the ones that you think are incorrect, and then resume the recording and I'll display the correct answer. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, and the correct answer is... All right, and here we have the correct answer. Looking at the first chart, we can see that there is some price action that is not being included in the trend boxes. Okay, so whenever you're drawing out your trend, you need to make sure that your trend boxes or trend lines include or engulf any price action on the chart. Okay, whenever you're drawing out your trends, there should not be price action that extends beyond your trend. So let's say on your particular chart, if you weren't using trend boxes, let's say you were using trend lines only, we can go ahead and delete this. And let's say we decided to go with just using trend lines. Okay, so we come here, then we have another trend line right here. And then we have another trend line here. From here down to there. You can see that this price point, these candles extend above this price point, and you can see that this price point does not include these candles either. Okay, whether it's vertical or horizontal, these price points are not included in anywhere inside these trend lines. So that's another reason why it may be good to use boxes, because it kind of gives you a foolproof way of making sure that you include all the price action that's on the chart. Okay, now if you thought this one was correct, then that was the correct answer. You can see that this little bit of pullback, you would have had to draw out 4 boxes, because if you only did 3 in this case, were 1, 2, and 3, this would not correctly identify the type of trend that we are in. Okay, you would have needed to draw out a 4th segment. And then if you thought this one was correct, that is also correct, because you, again, downtrends are identified by lower highs and lower lows. So you have a high, you have a low, you have a lower high, and then you have a lower low. And that's the same thing that you have over here. The only difference is with this one, this is more of a short-term trend, which it also includes a bit of a pullback, but the overall trend is identified. And then with this chart over here, this is more of a long-term trend, which we have through this long box here, the short pullback, and then we have the breakout segment extending beyond this segment here. All right. Okay, so pretty much this exercise was just to introduce you to the idea and the fact that there are multiple ways to draw out the correct trend on the chart. Again, you just want to be able to look at the price action and identify that in a downtrend, you have a high, a low, a lower high, and then a lower low. And as long as those characteristics are present in your trend lines or in the boxes that you've drawn out, then you've correctly identified the downtrend. And then again, make sure that any price action that is on the chart, make sure those are included in your boxes and or included in your trend lines. And to make that process easier, it may be easier for you to use boxes rather than trend lines. Okay, but all in all, during this particular lab and the uptrend lab, it was a bit obvious what the trend was. You want to make sure that when you're identifying trends on a chart or an asset that you're thinking about taking a position in, you really want to make sure that you go through the process of these quick steps, okay? Starting with current price, drawing the 3 most recent segments. So while in this case it was kind of obvious that it was a downtrend because that's the topic of conversation, you want to make sure that you adhere to the basic principles of the process when it comes to identifying the trend. Also practice going through the 5-step process and see if that simplifies it for you in the event that using the 3-step process does not work out. All right, so that will go ahead and conclude this lab. Before you move on, go to any chart in your preferred trading platform, utilizing the 5-step process, identify the trend, and once you've identified the downtrend or the trend in general, go ahead and identify the swing highs and swing lows of the trend, identify the breakout segments of the trend, and practice that a few times so that you can get comfortable with the process. All right. Hope to see you in the next video.